Kaivalya Navaneeta. There is a Tamil text from roughly the 17th century that has quietly outlasted most of the theological disputes of its age. It is attributed to a scholar named Tandavaraya Swami, writing somewhere in the Thanjavur region of South India, though the honest truth is that his biography dissolves into legend the closer you look. What we can say with confidence is that he worked within the Tamil Shaiva Advaita tradition, and that he produced something unusual, not a devotional hymn, not a commentary on earlier philosophy, but a tightly reasoned guide to the recognition that consciousness was never actually confined to the individual who has been searching for it. The text is called the Kaivalya Navaneeta, which means something like the cream of liberation, the essential butter churned out of the vast ocean of scriptural instruction. It was written for people who had already done a great deal of practice and study and still felt, somehow, that the thing they were looking for had not yet arrived. What the text has to say about that feeling is the heart of everything that follows. Phase 1. The churning of the curd, the qualities of the seeker. The invocation. I bow to the Supreme Teacher, the unmoving light, who appears as the Master in the heart. He has churned the great ocean of the Vedas to extract the nectar of knowledge for those who are weary. By his grace, the two is dissolved, and the one is established in the silence of the self. The world of names and forms is like curd. It is thick, heavy, and full of different flavors. Within the curd lies the butter, which is the self. But you cannot get the butter by simply looking at the curd. You must churn. The teaching that follows is that churning. The cream we seek is the final, unconditioned freedom. The student is defined not by what he knows, but by what he has stopped reaching for. He has looked at the palace of the king and the gardens of the gods, and he has seen only a heap of dust. He has realized that every pleasure is a masked pain, and every beginning is a vanishing in disguise. Dispassion is not sadness. It is clinical transparency. If you know a coin is counterfeit, you do not hate the coin. You simply stop trying to spend it. He is ready because he is empty. The text identifies 4 qualities the student must carry. The first is discrimination, the capacity to tell the gold from the dross. The second is dispassion, the cool eye cast on the feast of the ego. The third is a 6-fold inner steadiness, calmness, sensory restraint, endurance, and unshakable trust in the map. The fourth is the hunger for freedom itself. If the hunger is weak, the logic will be only an intellectual game. If the hunger is a wildfire, the logic becomes the wind that carries the flame to the center of the ego's forest. The student comes to the master. He does not come to argue or to demonstrate his learning. He comes as a refugee. Master, I am burning in the forest fire of my own desires. I am being tossed by the waves of my own history. I have realized I am a prisoner in a house of meat. Save me. I have no other foundation. The master's response is not consolation. It is the beginning of surgery. Do not be afraid, my son. The fire you feel is your own misperceived radiance. The prison you see is a visual error of your own gaze. Sit still. We will peel away the masks until the sovereign is revealed. The field is prepared. The churning has begun. Freedom is the only profitable career for a human being. The world is the curd. Knowledge is the butter. Identity is the prize of the churning. Phase 2. The anatomy of the self, the bodies and the sheaths. The student asks, "Master, you have told me I am the butter inside the curd, but when I look at myself, I see only this frame of meat and this storm of thoughts. Where is the seer hidden? How do I tell the dweller from the room?" The master responds, "You are suffering from a focusing error. You are like a man who looks at a series of nested jars and believes the space inside each one is different. To find the true self, we must perform a systematic stripping. We must dismantle the three bodies and peel away the five sheaths until the naked light remains." The text classifies three grades of body. The first is the gross body, the physical frame, built of food and destined for the worm. It is the hardware of the dream. The second is the subtle body, composed of the senses, the vital energies, and the mind, the software that travels from birth to birth. The third is the causal body, which is pure ignorance, the seed darkness from which the other two sprout. These are all objects. You see the body, you feel the mind, you witness the blankness of deep sleep. Logic dictates that the witness cannot be the thing it watches. You are the fourth, the substratum that allows the three containers to appear real. The master then peels the five sheaths one by one. The sheath of food, which is the physical form, is not you, for it is inert matter. The sheath of breath, which is the vital energy, is not you, for it is a blind biological wind. The sheath of mind, which is the storm of thought, is not you, for it is a shifting cloud. The sheath of intellect, which is the sense of being a doer, is not you, for it is a reflection that vanishes in sleep. The sheath of bliss, which is the peace of deep sleep, is not you, for it is a temporary state that passes. When the five cloaks are thrown aside, what is left? The student often fears the void, but the master corrects the vision. The one who sees the void is not the void. The one who knows that everything is gone is the awareness that cannot itself be gone. This awareness is unchanging. It does not grow old with the body. It is unstained. It does not become sorrowful with the mind. It is self-luminous. It does not need a lamp to see itself. The body and the mind are external equipment. Identification with them is a habit. The self is the unmoving witness of all the sheaths. You are not a body with a soul. You are awareness with a body. When the mind is noisy, the resident is still silent. Phase 3. The architecture of the shadow. The status of Maya. The student asks, "Master, if I am the unmoving light, how did I get lost in the meat cage? If the sun is always shining, where did this thick fog of me and mine come from? What is the substance of this darkness?" The master responds, "You are asking about the power of the goddess. We call it Maya, the shadow. It is not a thing, but a functional optical illusion. It is like the blue of the sky, vivid to the eye, yet non-existent in space. We shall now analyze the two workings of this shadow to see how the one appears to become many." The text identifies two powers of Maya. The first is the concealing power, the blindfold. This hides the truth. It makes the infinite look like a void. It is the root of the amnesia. The second is the projecting power, the dream architect. Once the truth is hidden, this power fills the vacuum with a world. It spins the elements, the stars, the bodies. Concealment is the seed. Projection is the tree. You cannot see the snake unless you first forget the rope. The architecture of the shadow takes nothing from the light, yet makes the light look like a universe. The shadow is woven of three strands. Sattva is the strand of harmony and light, the mirror that catches the sun. Rajas is the strand of passion and movement, the wind that ripples the water. Tamas is the strand of inertia and darkness, the mud that hides the gold. The Lord of the universe is awareness associated with pure clarity. The individual soul is the same awareness seen through a denser mixture of the strands. The ruler and the wanderer are made of the same light. They differ only in the density of the shadow they inhabit. The text then describes how the subtle elements are broken and mixed until they produce the gross world, the solid table, the hot fire, the heavy body. Matter is awareness slowed down until it looks like a thing. The world is a superimposition, a luminous projection. Your body is part organic substance and part cosmic dust, a biological hybrid designed to facilitate the dream of being a person. Maya is an indescribable power, not an eternal fact. The world is a projection born from the concealment of the truth. Order is maintained by the three strands of nature. The shadow has no independent heart of its own. The world is a program running on the hardware of your awareness. If the screen is showing a tragedy, do not try to wipe the blood off the screen. Understand the projector. Phase 4, the Master and the Mirror, the Encounter. The student, having understood the three bodies and the shadow of Maya, falls again at the Master's feet. He is no longer asking for information. He is asking for transformation. Master, I see the maps. I see the sheaths. But the me who sees them still feels like a prisoner. The shadow is gone from my logic, but it still haunts my heart. How do I make this vision unshakable? The Master responds, you are like a man who knows the law of gravity but still fears falling. The logic has reached your head, but it has not yet reached your pulse. I am the mirror, you are the face. Until now, you have been looking at the dust on the mirror. Now we shall wipe the glass so that only the original face remains. The Master begins the direct instruction. Look at the world. It is a parade of objects. Look at the body. It is a heap of food. Look at the mind. It is a storm of ripples. Who is the one that remains stationary while these three move? There is the seen, everything that can be known as a this, and there is the seer, the awareness that cannot itself be turned into a this. The witness is the unnegatable residue. It is the awareness that knows the mind is confused and therefore is not itself confused. It is the awareness that knows the body is sick and therefore is not itself sick. The student asks, if I am the witness, then who is this God I have worshipped? The Master applies the precision of the teaching. The God you worshipped was a projection of your own radiance in the mirror of pure clarity. The individual soul you thought you were was the projection of the same radiance in the mirror of a distorted mind. When the mirrors are dissolved, there is no Lord and no soul standing apart from each other. There is only the undivided mass of awareness, light recognizing itself. How do I keep this vision? The Master answers, by the direct strike of the word. Do not treat the scripture as a book of stories. Treat it as a medical report that has finally diagnosed your true condition. If the report says you are the ground state of all things, and your experience says you are a limited person, trust the report over the experience. Experience is the dream. The word is the alarm that wakes you. The witness is the only unmoving point in the universe. Recognition, not effort, is the key. The Master's level is not somewhere to reach. It is your own natural ground. Every time the mind says, I am limited, listen again for the roar, you are that. Phase 5. The logic of the great sentence, Tat Tvam Asi. The student hears the final word from the master, that thou art. On the surface, his logic screams in contradiction. That refers to the Lord, the all-knowing, the eternal, the creator. Thou refers to the seeker, the confused, the limited, the mortal. The master responds, you are trapped in the literal meaning. If you take the words at face value, the sentence is nonsense. But the teaching is a surgeon, not a poet. It uses the logic of implied meaning to remove the contradictory masks and reveal the identical substance underneath. The text uses the following illustration. Imagine you see a man today in a forest wearing rags. You saw the same man 10 years ago in a city wearing silk. You say, this is that same man. In saying so, you discard the silk and the rags, which are only his circumstances. You discard the city and the forest, which are only his locations. You discard the past and the present, which are only the times he was seen. What remains is the identical person beneath the costumes. The status and the location and the time are temporary adjuncts. The person is the persistent fact. The same logic applies to the great sentence. We discard the godhood and the manhood to find the consciousness that was wearing both. Take the Lord of the universe. Remove the all-knowing mind. Remove the all-powerful agency. Remove the role of creator. What remains when the royal robes of Maya are laid aside? Pure, unconditioned awareness. That is the implied meaning of the word that. Now take yourself. Remove the small mind. Remove the suffering body. Remove the role of seeker. What remains when the rags of ignorance are burned away? Pure, unconditioned awareness. That is the implied meaning of the word thou. Awareness equals awareness. The light in the heart of the Lord and the light in your own heart are the same substance. The distance between you and the Absolute was a linguistic error. You were like a man in a dream who thought he was a beggar, only to wake and find he was the king all along. The beggar was a temporary costume. What you are is the substance of the all. Phase 6. The 7 rungs of wisdom, the Jnana Bhumikas. The student asks, Master, I have understood the great equation, but I still feel the weight of the old world. Is there a process to awakening? How does a mind that has been asleep for a long time climb back to the sun? Map for me the levels of the ascent. The master responds, wisdom is not a sudden magic. It is a gradual thinning of the shadow. As the sun rises, the darkness does not leave in one block. It recedes in stages. There are 7 rungs on the ladder to the peak. The first is longing, the first spark. The realization that the world is a graveyard and the ego is a ghost. The desperate refusal to be a sleepwalker. The second is inquiry, the active study of the maps. The surgical pursuit of the question, who am I? The third is the thinning of the mind, when cravings grow weak and the noise of the world becomes a distant hum. These first 3 are the rungs of effort. The seeker is still doing the work. The 4th rung is the dawn of being. Here the truth strikes. The 2 is seen as a ghost. The seeker realizes he is the ground of all things. The ego tumor is successfully removed. The world looks like a dream. He is now free while alive. He has reached the safety of the shore. The 5th rung is deep detachment. The sage rests in the self so completely that the objects of the dream no longer have the power to pull his attention. He performs his duties without an eye behind them. The sixth is the non-perception of objects. He sees the ocean so intensely that he no longer even notices the individual waves. He must be nudged by others to eat or speak. The seventh is the absolute peak. The difference between I and that is vaporized. He is the infinite sky. He is no longer a person. He is the presence itself. Wisdom is a graded evolution of the mind's density. Realization begins at the fourth rung. The peak is the total disappearance of any separation. Do not be discouraged if you are still on the first or second rung. The longing is the fuel. The inquiry is the engine. The momentum of the search will carry you. Phase 7. The 7 stages of ignorance, the Ajnana Bhumikas. The student, having seen the ladder of wisdom, asks, Master, if the ascent to the sun is so clear, why did I ever descend into this darkness? How does the unmoving light become the lost wanderer? Map for me the gravity of the fall. Show me the layers of the sleep. The master responds, just as wisdom has its rungs, so does ignorance. You did not fall in a single moment. You descended through 7 stages of amnesia. To wake up completely, you must recognize the depth of the basement from which you have climbed. The first stage is the seed waking, the pure causal state where awareness is touched by the first vibration of difference, but no world has yet appeared, the seed of the me. The second is ordinary waking, when the seed sprouts, the I becomes a subject and everything else becomes an object. You begin to believe you are a separate point in space. The third is great waking, when the I-ness hardens. You identify fiercely with the body, the family, the social role. The dream looks as solid as stone. In these 3 stages, the veil is constructed. The seeker moves from the idea of two to the full conviction of two. He becomes a citizen of the shadow world. The fourth stage is the waking dream, when the mind becomes a factory of fantasies. You live in your hopes and daydreams and intentions. You are no longer seeing even the physical world clearly. You are seeing your projections upon it. The fifth is ordinary dream, when the senses shut down, but the mind continues to spin the world. You mistake mental phantoms for objective facts. The mind is so intoxicated by its own creations that it has completely lost the scent of the source. The sixth stage is dream waking, when you recall the dream while awake, yet you believe the waking world is the final reality. You think you are awake because your eyes are open. The seventh is deep sleep, the total blackout. The mind is folded back into the causal body. Awareness is present, but it is covered by a thick fog. You wake from it and say, I knew nothing. The tragedy of the seventh stage is that you are touching the absolute, but you are wrapped in a blanket. You taste the peace, but you do not recognize who is tasting it. You are like a man who sleeps in a palace, but thinks he is in a cave. Bondage is a graded intensification of a single error. Ignorance is not a void. It is a program of separation. What we call normal, rational waking life is actually a deep stage of spiritual amnesia. Use the inquiry to reverse the descent. Climb back through the fantasies and the seed until only the self-luminous sun remains. Phase 8, the liquidation of action, Karma Kshaya. The student asks, Master, I see the layers of the sleep, but the weight of my past follows me. My actions, good and bad, seem to have written a script that I am forced to perform. How can I be the infinite while I am still a debtor to time? How do I burn the archive of my history? The master responds, you are suffering from the delusion of agency. You believe the actions belong to the self when they actually belong to the costume. There is a threefold ledger of your life. Knowledge is the chemical solvent that dissolves the first two parts and makes the third weightless. The first is the stored past, the mountain of seeds gathered over lifetimes, the debts waiting to bear fruit. The second is future action, what you might do after the truth is known. The third is the current momentum, the specific arrow that was shot from the bow of past causes to give birth to this particular body and this particular life. Usually these three are iron ropes. The one who believes they are the doer carries the weight of the past, creates new weight in the present, and is crushed by the momentum of destiny. Liberation is the breaking of identity with the doer. The text uses the image of fire. Just as 1,000 tons of cotton can be turned to ash by a single spark, the mountain of stored past is incinerated the moment the recognition arises. The past actions depend on the belief that I was the doer. When the doer is revealed to be a ghost, the record of the ghost vanishes. As for future actions, they do not adhere to the sage, just as water does not adhere to a lotus leaf. He acts, but he leaves no footprints in the sand of time. But the student asks, why does the body not fall immediately? Consider the arrow. The ignorance that drew the bow is dead, but the arrow has already left the string. It must hit its target and exhaust its energy. The body will walk, eat, age, and die. The sage is the stationary sky through which the arrow body is currently flying. He watches the body's destiny with the detachment of a stranger. The past is burned by the fire of truth. The future is prevented by the gaze of detachment. The present is rendered harmless by the shift in identity. You cannot pay off a debt for a person who never truly existed. Instead, withdraw the ownership. When the body is praised or blamed, remain as the silence. The king has realized he has no history and no debt. The ledger is ash. Phase 9, The Clearing of Doubts, Part 1, The Reality of the Scene. The student, though enlightened by the great sentence, returns with a persistent doubt. Master, the logic is unassailable. I know I am the witness, yet the world still feels real. When I touch the stone, it is hard. When I see the sun, it is bright. If the world is a mirage, why is the illusion so robust? Why does my body still tremble at the sight of a tiger if the tiger is just a thought? The master responds, you are suffering from the habit of the old vision. Your knowledge is a new seed, but your experience is an ancient forest. To clear the path, we must now address every doubt with the precision of a surgeon. Vividness of experience is no proof of independent reality. Consider the dream. In a dream, you are wounded by an arrow. The pain is vivid. The blood looks red. Your fear is absolute. Does the pain prove the arrow is real? Does the fear prove the wound has substance? No, the effect does not validate the cause. The mind has the power to produce real physiological responses from false stimuli. The waking world is a long dream. The hardness of the stone is a specific frequency of your own awareness, meant to provide a consistent stage for the biological drama. The capacity to feel the hardness without believing in the independent existence of the thing is what this teaching points toward. A dualist objects, but the world is useful. Water quenches thirst. Dream water cannot quench a waking thirst. Therefore, the waking world is a different kind of reality. The response is, you are comparing two different orders of being. Waking water quenches waking thirst. Dream water quenches dream thirst. Neither can reach the other. But for the witness, both are equally seen. Both depend on awareness for their visibility. Utility is a property of the dream's internal logic. It is not a proof of ultimate substance. Another question arises. If the world is false, why does it follow such strict laws? Why does the sun not rise in the west? The laws of nature are the grammar of the projection. Just as a well-written poem follows rules of meter, the dream of the universe follows the rules of causality. The consistency of the mirage does not make it any less a mirage. The sage admires the consistency while remaining as the sky that does not participate in the plot. Vividness is a mental frequency, not a physical proof. Utility is local to the dream state. Consistency is the aesthetic of the projection. The hardness of the palace walls cannot trap the space that you are. Phase 10, The Clearing of Doubts, Part 2, The Logic of Non-Dualship. The student, understanding the reality of the scene, poses a final behavioral doubt. Master, you say the sage is the non-doer. Yet I see the sage teaching, walking to the river, eating his meal. If there is no doer, who is moving the limbs? If the self is the ground state, and the ground state is unmoving, how can a sage be active in the world? Is he not simply a better kind of actor? The master responds, you are still confusing the occupant with the vehicle. The sage is like a passenger in a chariot. The horses move, the wheels turn, the chariot travels from city to city. Does the passenger move? No, he remains stationary on his seat while the machinery of the chariot performs the travel. Consider a fan that has been switched off. The current is cut, the motor is dead, but because of the momentum generated while the switch was on, the blades continue to whirl. The sage speaks, eats, and acts not because he wants to, but because the kinetic energy of birth has not yet reached zero. He is the unmoving light illuminating a moving shadow. Student asks further, but does he not feel the results of his deeds? If he helps someone, is he not a good doer? He is like a professional actor on a stage. He plays the role of a king who is generous or a beggar who is hungry. He performs the actions with total precision. But in his heart, he knows his real name and his real home. He does not own the king's gold. He does not feel the beggar's hunger. His deeds are play, a shimmering that leaves no footprint in his awareness. Look at a mirror. A fire is lit in front of the mirror. Does the mirror get hot? No, a flood occurs in front of the mirror. Does the mirror get wet? No, the mirror reflects the action perfectly, but it never participates in the chemistry. The body is acting, the mind is thinking, the heart is feeling, but you are the mirror that provides the space for the drama without being touched by the plot. Movement does not require a mover. Activity is the mechanical residual of the past. The self remains as the unmoving sky even during the storm of action. Let the body do what it was born to do. Let the intellect solve the problems it was trained to solve. Remain as the stationary background. The doer is a ghost. Phase 11. The Living Free, Jivanmukti. The student, his doubts cleared by the systematic dismantling of the mirage, looks at the world with a new eye. He asks, Master, tell me of the one who is free while alive. How does he walk among men? What is the flavor of his life? Is he a different type of human, or a human who has finally become real? The master responds, the jivanmukta is the recovered patient. He has suffered from the fever of duality for lifetimes, and now the fever has broken. He still carries the scars of his history, but the poison is gone. He is the only truly sane man in a ward full of sleepwalkers. He is characterized by a sublime indifference that the world mistakes for coldness, but which is actually the highest love. The text identifies the markers of the free one. He treats his own body as if it were a tree in a public park. He cares for it, but he does not own it. He sees the same ground of being in a pile of gold, a heap of waste, a friend, and an enemy. The label no longer distracts him from the substance. He does not try to be kind. Kindness follows him like his own shadow, because he recognizes that every other person is his own self. He feels the cold and the heat, the praise and the insult, but they have no hooks to pull his heart from its center. The sage is like a dry leaf falling from a tree. A green leaf clings to the branch and resists the wind. A dry leaf has let go of the sap of attachment. When the wind of destiny blows, the dry leaf goes wherever it is taken. If it is blown into a palace, it is not proud. If it is blown into a gutter, it is not ashamed. It does not go, it is carried. The text offers another image. The ignorant man is terrified when the magician appears to cut someone in half. He screams and reaches for a bandage. The sage watches with the same eyes, but he is smiling. He sees the hidden partition. He knows that what appears to be cut is whole. The world is the saw. The sage sees the partition of awareness that keeps the truth whole even while the body is sliced by time. Freedom is a psychological status, not a social role. Equanimity is the natural byproduct of non-duality. When the mind is happy, watch the happiness. When the mind is sad, watch the sadness. You are the space in which both occur. The sage is not the movie, he is the screen. Phase 12, the sovereign silence, Kaivalya. The churning is complete. The cream has separated from the milk. We have established the qualities of the seeker, dissected the bodies and the sheaths, understood the shadow of Maya, met the master as a mirror, cracked open the great equation of identity, mapped the 7 rungs of wisdom and the 7 descents of ignorance, watched the karma burn, answered every doubt the mind can raise, understood how the sage acts without acting, and seen the face of the one who is free while alive. What remains is not a further teaching. What remains is the recognition that the one who has been following this teaching was never the student. The cream was always there. The churning was the path by which you stopped believing it was hidden. The wave does not become the ocean. The wave recognizes that it was always ocean, appearing as a wave. The text ends here. The recognition does not.